Starting. The Hangout is live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talking About Survivor. I am Christiana Ellis.
I am Mike Mateen.
And tonight we're talking about Survivor Ghost Island, episode 12, coming up on the home stretch of this season. It's been an interesting season, just thinking of it back, because they're doing lots of experimental sorts of twists that I think in the grand scheme of things haven't mattered very much.
The amount of idols has mattered.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. I guess maybe I was just in that mood because this was another episode where it seemed like they went to a lot of effort to make it seem as though something other than the obvious might happen, only to have the obvious happen after all.
Right.
That said, seems like Wendell and Dom are unstoppable at this point.
They've got a pretty good thing going. Yeah.
Yeah.
Idols. Yeah.
The only thing I can think right now is, do the two of them turn on each other before the end? That's, to my mind, that's the only real suspense left here. Because I feel like one or the other of them wins it.
Well, or when we get down to once idols are no longer a factor, like, can they?
Yeah, that's true.
Well, let's talk about when they would turn on each other too.
Well, right. And also, a big part of the issue here is that we have seen a couple of times now where people consider making a move on them and then not doing it. And it's because I think every time you've got, it's kind of like that whole Boston Rob strategy, is that each individual person thinks that they're the one that's got the whole thing under control, even though what we're seeing from the outside is everyone else in orbit around those two guys.
Well, and they are helped again by the fact that they both have idols. So there is there's a reason to not, like, to give in to the side of not making the move. That's just a little bit easier because you have to worry about, are we going to effectively blindside them? Is somebody going to turn, and then they're going to know, and they're going to use their idol, and then I might, because I was supposed to be in with them and I'm not, will they turn on me when they find out? And then the idol, blah, blah, So you start having all those conversations, and it's like, well, it's probably just easier just to keep going with them right now. But at some point,
you're going to get to, it's 4 people left and 2 of them are Wendell and Dom. And then you're just screwed.
Yeah, because even if they turn on each other, at the very end, barring something happening from this point on, like if it was to end today and, with any of those other players, any other 2 and Wendell or Dom, I would think that Wendell or Dom would win.
Yeah.
So something has got to happen. Like, you've either got to get them out of the game or do something to.
Yeah.
And that's why it's like, it seems crazy. Like, take the shot, because at least if you blindside Wendell this time, when you go up against Dom, in the end, let's say he continues to make it, you can say, I was the one that busted up his strategy, and that's why I'm here. Whereas I wouldn't have been. It would have been him and Wendell sitting here, and everybody would have known that probably wouldn't have happened. But you at least have a case. And if Dom, and once you take one of them out, the other one becomes significantly less powerful. And you can potentially get the other one out before going to the end. So while I get what they're doing, total armchair Survivor, you feel like at this point you would want to go down swinging.
I think so. You're right that obviously we're playing Armchair Survivor. We are working with a perspective that is both better and worse in a lot of ways than the people on the island. Because on the one hand, we see lots of things. Everyone on the island is limited to their own personal perspective. They don't see what other people are doing when they're not around, but then we see an edited, distilled version, right? And it's also an edited, distilled version where the producers selectively leave out things that would spoil the suspense for the tribal council. Right? So there are plenty of times where everyone going into the tribal council knows exactly what's going on because they had a conversation where they hashed it all out, but we didn't see it. And so we're just, we don't know. But that said, I feel like this was the time. I really don't understand the logic at this point because, I mean, we have Laurel kind of breaking it down in the sense of saying, well, you have the guys that are more trustworthy, but you don't think you can beat them versus the people who are less trustworthy, but you think you could maybe beat them. And I'm thinking if you want to win, that seems like a no-brainer to me.
At this point, like that, this is endgame now. You've got to be playing like that. And that's the thing is, it doesn't matter if people are trustworthy at this point. The deck's going to reshuffle so many more times, especially if you knock out the big guys.
Right. Especially if the only reason that they are trustworthy is because they have done the same math you have, and they think they can beat you. That's why they are trustworthy to you, because they want you to bring you along so that they can win.
Right.
So, I was disappointed in Laurel and Donathan this time for the decision that they made here. Now, maybe there's more to it, and we'll hear about that. But I think they made the wrong decision. I think it was time to try to make a move, even if it blew up, because when you're at the point where you're in the final 8, there's only a few more tribal councils left. At a certain point, you need to still have enough people to take, if the concern is they have an idol, well, then make them play it at least. Right?
Take that risk and hope that you made the right play, that you either blindsided them or you're not the target on the other end of it. You know?
So, in any event, if we jump back to the beginning of the episode, everyone was really confused about, like, hey, wait a minute. How come there was too many votes in that last tribal council? There was one more vote than there ought to have been. And Kellen was kind of upfront about it, but I don't, maybe it was all over for her already at that point. But I just feel like the whole way she sort of played that out was kind of like yeah, bummer. I tried a thing. It didn't work. Oh, well, my bad. But it felt almost like yep, I have lost the game now and I'm just hanging out. Not that she didn't kind of rally a bit later, but that's how it felt in that scene to me. Right. Like she was just accepting that now she was not going to be able to win the game. I don't know. Maybe I'm overreacting.
No, I mean, I think that's a fair. I mean, that's not how I took it, but I think it's still a fair reaction.
Yeah. So. I mean, I guess specifically what she was trying to say is, like, she was just sort of very matter of fact about it. Like, she wasn't making excuses for anything. She just sort of would, like, sum up the facts of, yes, this is what I did. This is why it didn't work. I understand that Laurel's mad at me. But it also just felt like okay, but yeah, like, defend yourself. Like, maybe she was just bummed that it didn't work, and she was not prepared to deal with the after effects.
That's probably more like it. I think I just took it as like a personality quirk with her, in that that's just how she talks when having to, like, explain herself on something. Matter of fact. But I could see it definitely as, like, what you were just saying there. So
yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm maybe struggling because I had this feeling like she was borderline given up, but couldn't quite put my finger on what it was that made me feel that way.
Yeah, I can see that.
Maybe it was just my own sense of feeling like You made a move that blew up in your face. And at this point, I think that the only, no one's going to trust you with anything again, which is, I think, exactly what happened this time. Because none of the people who she was trying to build this alliance with were willing to work with her, or at least the crucial people weren't.
Right.
So maybe it's just my own assessment of feeling like I think, she tried, but I think her time is more or less over at this point.
Yeah.
In any event, you never know. I mean, things can always still get, mixed up. She might pull off something really impressive. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think more likely the only way that her game continues to extend further is that she becomes a tool if somebody else wants to do something. I don't see her motivated to try something new, because that is one place where I will agree with you, is it felt like, because of how poorly her, use of the advantage went, it's almost like she's going to be gun shy. And that's a little bit of what, like, she's not going to try anything else because it's like, God, she's not going to say this, but there's almost like this, oh, I suck at like making these moves,
Yeah.
So she's not as passionate about it. So,
right. I think that she is ended up in the unfortunate strategic position of not being in the favored inner circle, but having pissed off the other people who are not in the inner circle.
Right.
So it's like, who's going to work with her at that point? Because it's like, okay, well, I've got the people who are probably going to win who have already decided I'm not with them. And I've got the people that I tried to step on to get into the inner circle and it didn't work.
Right.
And so that's kind of everybody that's left.
Right. And those people may take her back if they need to start knocking out the inner circle, but they won't. I don't know that puts her in a position to win. I mean, I think she had her shot at a move. It didn't work. But but that's what it comes down to, what I was saying earlier in this. Like, I still respect that she tried something.
Oh yeah, no, I don't want to. I guess I'm glad you said that, because I don't want to overstate that, because I definitely feel like, kind of like with Desiree the week before, I would rather people try to make a move and have it blow up in their face. I think that's more interesting, and it's something you can put on your resume better than I played it safe until the end and then I lost.
Right. Yeah. What's the point in that?
Yeah. And that's exactly why I was disappointed with Laurel and Donathan's decision this time. But in any event, she did try something and it definitely blew up in her face. So she's in a tough spot as things stand now.
Sure.
And I guess that's what people are hoping to avoid, right? When they play it safe, is that they're seeing that outcome and say, boy, don't want to be there. But anyway, Laurel, in the meantime, is coming out of that tribal council feeling really grateful and reassured that Dom and Wendell stood by her, chose her when there was the whole, debate about it. And that brought us to the reward challenge, which was pretty straightforward. I mean, it's just very simple obstacle course and then beanbag toss as far as the actual challenge was concerned. But that's okay, because it left more time for meeting everybody's loved ones.
Which is always fun.
Were there any of them that really stood out for you?
What stood out the most for me was that all of them were blood relatives except Dom's wife. To a point where, like, when it started getting far enough into it, I was wondering if it was like a requirement or a suggestion of the producers that be who they choose for this time around, before it got to Dom, obviously.
Right.
Because it just seemed odd that it was like literally everybody was, brother, aunt, daughter, sister, brother. I mean, they're actually all brothers and sisters except Donathan's aunt Angela's daughter, and Dom's wife. Everybody else was a sibling.
Donathan's mother.
Jonathan's aunt.
Oh, was it? I thought I wrote mother in my notes, but you may be right.
No, it was his aunt. Well, my notes say aunt, so.
Okay. That's more specific, so that's probably right.
Either way, it was still the three of them that weren't with siblings. Everybody else was a sibling. Which was, Wendell's father. So.
Yeah. Well, so, the point is that lots of blood relatives, fewer spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, those sorts of things. And I suspect given that it wasn't, consistent all the way through, that it probably was just a coincidence.
Yeah, that's what I figured at the end of it. It was just that, but that was the thing that stood out to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all the interactions were great. I mean, I thought, they're always fun. I mean, just everybody see watching other people be happy and cry is always happy and cry. Like, that's just how people, if you're a normal human, Well,
especially when it runs very counter to sort of the demeanor that they've had otherwise.
Right.
Like Wendell being so close with his dad and so great to see him. It's not like he was like, tough Mr. Macho or something exactly, but, he certainly got very emotional, much more so than we've seen him get otherwise.
Yeah.
And, everyone's pretty emotional. The only, I took notes for all of them, but I think the other ones that kind of stood out to me was with Angela's daughter, and how there was kind of that double-edged statement about, I'm proud of my mom and how she sacrifices family to serve the country, and how that's kind of a joy and a pain sort of thing.
Yep.
And then, of course, we also had Dom's wife sobbing and saying, "I love you and hate you so much." But at the same time, they obviously seem like they're really close and, miss each other a lot. And it was kind of neat to see that side of Dom. Not that Dom was as our first impression of him was someone that he was a little, broy or a little more aggressive, and he's sort of revealed himself as much more insightful and self-aware and sensitive to others over the course of the season.
Right. Yeah, he's trying to, he has that very New York stereotype to him.
Yeah.
A lot of the time. So, well, and actually, here's where I'm almost positive that it was Jonathan's aunt, is because I think they discussed the fact that he asked about how his mom was doing, because he normally takes care of her.
Oh, okay. See, that might have been where I got confused. I think it was also possible that I just didn't hear what Probst said and assumed.
Yeah.
That she was his mother.
Yeah, so I believe. It didn't clarify that it was that aunt, but it seems like it was the aunt that's the sister of his mom.
Right.
And his mom is somebody he normally takes care of, and was and he's been nervous about the fact that he's not there taking care of her, and so he was happy that she's doing well. But the other thing that I thought stood out, I love the fact that she was in dress, a full dress, and coming on Survivor, and she's still in her Sunday best. It was.
Yeah.
It was cool.
That whole thing of oh, I'm going to be on TV, I want to look nice, that sort of thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it helps that it's not like one of the challenges where the loved one has to participate in the challenge or something. But so in any event, we had the challenge, and it was it winnowed down to Sebastian and Dom fairly quickly. In terms of the two of them, it was actually a little surprising to me to have Dom be one of the first to get under that obstacle where you have to dig a hole and go under it, just because he's a relatively big guy. It doesn't seem obvious that he would be one of the first two to manage to do that.
Yeah, I mean, he must have just dug a really good hole,
Yeah.
that was deep without, but not overly, like not too big, like
Hmm.
just, like the right kind of, like the depth was in the right place so he could like kind of go
Yeah.
down and up. I mean, I
Well,
didn't pay
yeah.
much attention, but you're right. It
Yeah.
is hard. Yeah.
Because I mean, the point is, we saw the two of them get to throw a few times, and then it was over before we really even saw anyone get to that point.
Right.
Um, so in any event, though, it was Sebastian that won. Likely partly by virtue of him just he got there first, and so had a few extra throws. Um, but so as is typical for these challenges, he gets to pick a few people, and they always do this thing where it's like you don't know in advance how many it's going to be. So it's like, first pick one, now pick another, now pick another. And I thought it was really interesting for him to start with Dom and Wendell, because I think it's revealing of Sebastian's mindset, which we haven't really had a lot of insight into recently, like in terms of who he's trying to ally with.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also interesting for us because we know that, at least in the discussions before this episode, Dom and Wendell weren't really talking about Sebastian as being one of their one of their tight. Certainly not in the 4. They might be willing to have him be number 5. But in any event, though, and then he also brings Jonathan. And then that's all that he can choose. But then there's the additional wrinkle that I did think was interesting, but I also felt like that there was a piece of it that I was a little unclear on. So the idea was Sebastian gets first option, that he can go to Ghost Island and get a guaranteed advantage if he sacrifices the reward. But if he opts not to do that, he can let first one of their 4 make that decision. But if none of them take it, then I think Probst he said, leaves it in the hands of the other 4, but doesn't make it clear of, like, does that mean the other 4 decide which of the winning 4 go, or that they can pick whoever they want?
Yeah.
Meaning, if Wendell hadn't taken it.
Yeah, it was unclear what happened next.
Yeah. Especially because back at the camp, the girls seemed mad about him making that decision, because it sounded like, but based on what they were saying, that if he had passed on it, and none of the 4 going on the reward had taken it, then there was the potential for them to get the reward and then someone else to go to Ghost Island. And instead, Wendell ended up, like, sacrificing a reward that nobody else then gets. So it's kind of wasted.
Right.
Whereas you could have had 4 people go on the reward and 1 person go to Ghost Island. And instead, only 3 people get to go on the reward and 1 person goes to Ghost Island.
Yeah. And without being clear of like exactly how it worked, it was hard to understand.
Yeah.
Whether they were just being bitter because they just didn't get to do either, or whether there was a legitimate case against like what Wendell did. And it wasn't a legit case. Like, it was just more them just being grumpy about the fact that they didn't get either of the pieces. But
it was also, the people who ultimately were pushing to try to have Wendell be the one to go were the ones doing most of the complaining there. And so it might have been they're kind of working that up a little bit, trying to build that negative energy against him. But it was unclear. But at the very least, it seemed to me that their anger at Wendell specifically led me to believe that, because Wendell wasn't the one who chose who went on the reward, so why be mad at him unless him accepting it meant that someone else didn't get to who wanted it to?
Right.
So Wendell takes it, though, And I liked that when he was at Ghost Island, there was discussion that we didn't see happen, but him basically saying, "Oh yeah, my dad and I were totally on the same page." He said, "No, absolutely, you should go. I love seeing you, but I would also, you're here on Survivor. You should,
yeah,
do it. Be on Survivor and play the game." I liked that.
I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah. And I do like Wendell, even though I was weirdly rooting for him to go, not because I want him to go, but just because I feel like the others, if they're playing their best game, should have taken him out.
Right.
But so in any event, yeah, let's see. So sorry, I scrolled too far down in my notes.
All right.
Let's see. So Wendell does volunteer. He gets, and his guaranteed advantage is a repeat of what Malcolm got in his previous season, which is both a second chance in the immunity challenge, but plus the ability to practice it.
Yep.
Which one of the things that occurred to me watching him practice it is to think about how you would plan as far as how much time do you spend practicing it? Because on the one hand, taking at least a few minutes to familiarize yourself with how it feels, experiment a little bit is one thing. But if you are struggling or practicing too much, you potentially wear down the muscles that you're going to need at peak condition when you do the actual challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's not like you're going to, it's not like, yeah, like you can't practice a marathon the day before. Right. Like at some point, like there's just going to be whether you can get through it or you can't. You're not going to build up everything to it. Yeah. So yeah, you go and familiarize yourself, make sure you feel confident in kind of some of the nuances of, okay, here's how it's going to feel if I start weakening on one side. Like maybe, spend 5 to 10 minutes kind of figuring out how you readjust when you start to fail and that kind of stuff, and then be done.
We actually have a chatter in the chat, assuming that they're still there, but was just saying, let's talk strategy, not personality. Wendell is the way to go. And it's like, I think that's kind of what we're saying too, is that, if we like Wendell, I think the reason that he would be the right person to take out from the perspective of the others is because he's good and he's going to win if he gets to the end.
Well, and that's where I think that, from where you combine personality and strategy is because Wendell has a very good personality amongst all of them, more so even than Dom. He's even a greater threat as long as they stay together. So yeah, he absolutely should have been the one to go. And that's what I said, that you should have, even though he had the idol, that it would have been better to risk it on this episode, when you had the chance to, you have to go down swinging on it. Like he's going to be very dangerous going forward, And as I think we talked, and maybe they didn't see the beginning, is that, right now it looks like until Dom and Wendell turn on each other, that's really the only way to get rid of them.
Yeah.
And so they definitely should have done that. 100% agree.
So we, at the reward, we have Dom vowing to Donathan's aunt, I guess my notes still say mother, that he's committed to going to the end with Donathan. And he seems, and we know based on Dom's confessionals that that's more or less true. Doesn't mean that he wouldn't adapt to a changing situation, but that his loose plan does seem to be final four of Wendell, Laurel, and Donathan, right? Yeah, and himself, of course. But it's interesting that, as she is...
He feels like he can beat Laurel and Donathan and also trust Laurel and Donathan. So that's why he wants them to be the other two. And then
right. And so as she's joking about holding him to that promise, we also have a confessional of Jonathan going, yeah, I'm actually not sure that's what I want, because Wendell and Dom are big threats, so I might have to do something about it. And I'm at that point thinking, like, yeah, you absolutely, you definitely do. So, and then back at camp, we talked about this a little bit already. The four girls back at camp complain about the guys getting everything good, and it did feel weirdly sour grapes bitterness, because a lot of the stuff they were complaining about, oh, them getting everything good, is like, well, yeah, because they're winning. I mean, it's not like random, but at the same time, certainly building up the emotional energy to potentially make a move is absolutely a reasonable thing to be doing. And so I think that they're targeting the right place. Yep. So it doesn't really matter if it's logical to question the fairness of them getting all the rewards or whatever, so much as to say they are correct that they should try to take out Wendell or Dom.
Yep.
But so they're saying at that point that if the four of them can bring in Jonathan, that they could do it, and it would need to be kind of a blind side because of the worry about idols. And then ultimately, here's where we have Laurel in a confessional saying, I'm a little bit wary of working with Kellen, who just tried with both her regular vote and an extra vote to vote me out. So I don't think I like that. And she's saying, like, otherwise, I think it's an interesting plan, but but she has these reservations. And I mean, I think ultimately that is where her decision came from, is that this concern of like, she just tried to vote me out. I have no confidence that if I helped her with this, that she wouldn't just turn right around and vote me out again. Or for that matter, even turn on me. Like if I agree to help, she might go to them and tell them that I was in on this plan to take them out and try to use that to turn it against me, which is kind of what happened with Desiree, right?
Right.
So, so I could definitely understand that hesitation. Like even as we talk about, oh, they should have taken out Wendell or Dom, it's like, I could also see Laurel not wanting to work with Kellen on something. And then this is where we get to the immunity challenge. And one of the things that I thought was a little bit interesting that I hadn't fully considered when we heard about the advantage was this idea of like, how do you do it when he gets to start over? And apparently the answer is everybody gets to set it down and pick it up again.
Right.
And I guess that makes sense.
Well, we knew that because you would have to remember back, but that's how it happened when Malcolm did it too.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I didn't remember that happening. And I guess it does make sense, but it just hadn't occurred to me. But in any event, unfortunately, Wendell is not able to hold on all that long. So I would have been interested to hear in a confessional if he thought, like, did he practice too much? Not enough? What does he think the problem there was?
I just think he wasn't any good at it.
And that's probably a possibility too. I mean, like some of those just you really need, it's a sort of specialized skill to be able to hold really still like that.
Right, and that was the point I was trying to make. I mean, the analogy was maybe poor in that, like, this isn't like training for a marathon, like an endurance. The fact that, like, if you're not good at it, then the practicing the day before does not make you good at it.
Well, it's like cramming for a test if you haven't studied all year.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So in any event, we ended up with a final three of Chelsea, Dom, and Jonathan. And well, I'm just realizing my notes actually have it wrong, because in my notes it says that Jonathan was the winner, but that's not correct. I think I just wrote it wrong. because it was actually Dominic who won, which produces a very different outcome. I think if Dom had been vulnerable, I think it might have been more likely to have the others try to make their move, because if the concern is Wendell and Dom are working together and between them they might have at least one idol, that if Dom is already immune from the challenge, that is a more dangerous time.
Right.
And I think that actually was, that little tiny bit of an argument of Donathan and Laurel discussing, like, we want to make a move, but is now the time? Or do we take out Chelsea and get Dom or Wendell later? Right?
Now is the time, guys. Now is the time.
I think so. I think you and I are on the same page, but at least in terms of trying to understand where their heads were at, I think that might have been the concern. But in any event, we have Wendell, bummed not to win, but feeling good about his alliance, as he should be, because it held strong for him and he didn't even have to play his idol.
Yep.
And he basically, Dom is saying, that the four of them that went on the reward, plus Laurel, will vote out Chelsea, which is basically his exact alliance plus Sebastian.
Right.
Just worked out that way. And it worked out that Sebastian was the one that built up the reward that way. And because he's trying to get in on that alliance, which, we haven't really talked a lot about Sebastian's strategy, but it is sort of a weird move at this stage of the game to try to work your way in to the alliance of people who are big threats.
Right. Because, unless they get wind of something, like if Laurel and Donathan play it correctly, they do still have an outside chance here, because there are enough people for a little while. Yeah. I know we felt like this was a good opportunity. I still think it was the right time to do it.
Right.
Where Sebastian comes into play is if, Dom and Wendell do not get complacent and, or still have their ear to the ground and catch wind of something like that.
Yeah.
And are then prepared to then bring in other people to get rid of either Laurel or Donathan or whatever is kind of going with that. Sebastian might be willing to jump in at that point if he doesn't feel like he's got any clout with the other group.
Yeah. And so it's definitely possible, but it's just the longer you wait, especially if you think that idols might be in play, the longer you wait to try to get those idols out of the way, you're going to get to the tribal councils where they're just going to play it anyway. Right. Because why not?
Right. And then you're stuck like, I guess we just keep voting with them or we have to do something different that doesn't make any sense for our game.
Yeah.
And I think it's only, if I look at it correctly, there's only 2, maybe 3 votes left.
Right. So there's going to be episode 13, which will take us from 7 to 6.
Right. So that's 1, 6 to 5. And I think 5 to 4 is the last time you can use an idol, right?
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
So there's 3 votes to get to,
And especially since we know that there's actually 2 idols involved, that if they play it smart, well, especially and not to mention that either of them could win challenges too. Still,
exactly. If one or the other wins a challenge, then they're in a really good spot.
Yeah.
So,
so in any event, we have the girls talking about who to target, and Wendell is kind of the obvious choice because Dom is immune. And Kellen hopes that it will be the sweetest Survivor victory so far. I don't know, like the episode did a lot of work trying to make us think that it was possible that was going to happen. And I won't pretend like I knew for sure, but I think in my gut, I didn't think it was going to work.
No, I mean, we just saw too much from Laurel. Like Laurel and Donathan were too hesitant in every conversation that we saw of doing it right now. Like there was too much of like, is now the right time? I don't know. Like you're right. It did a good job of like making it so I wanted to watch till the end to make sure that that's exactly what happened. But you're right. In your gut, you kind of knew where it was going to go.
Well, the one thing that I thought the direction it might have been going, and it didn't end up going that way, is that we did have a scene where Wendell talks about Laurel not giving him the same sort of confident vibe that he was used to from her. And for one, I thought it was great that he was pretty insightful about that, since we knew she was actually considering another option, right? Even though she didn't end up going that way, but for him to kind of read on her that she's thinking about it. And, you know, part of that might have been paranoia too, but because she didn't end up making that other choice. But it might just be that he detected that on her, pursued it to make sure that she was actually with him, locked it in, and that's why she stayed on his side, right?
You were...
We got a dog watching, concerned.
Yep. Well, dinner time.
Well, you know, it's very important. But in any event, it might be that, you know, that one scene was what made me think briefly, is it possible that Wendell's concern about Laurel might lead him and or Dom to be concerned enough about her that they would turn on her? But it didn't end up going that way at all. And I suspect, like I said, that what happened is he was concerned about her, so he followed up with her and locked it in.
Right.
But yeah, so we had, you know, going into tribal council, Donathan and Laurel comparing notes and both saying, you know, they are both willing and interested in making a move, but is tonight the night? You and I think that it probably was. Not to say that there's no more opportunities, but this would have been a good one.
Yep.
And this is where Laurel actually lays it out. Like, do you go with the trustworthy people who you are not sure you can beat, or the sketchy people that you think you can? And I was like practically yelling at my TV. He's like, you're going to go with the sure thing that can beat you? What? How does that end well for you?
Yeah.
I mean, like, you don't see how, I don't see how that's, you know, it's like buying an airline ticket to the wrong destination because it was a very low ticket price. It's like, well, yeah, you saved the money, but you're in the wrong place now.
True.
Anyway, at the tribal council, except for Kellen kind of laying out the hurt feelings about the previous tribal council, and Donathan kind of, you know, for all the talk of everybody acting shocked that he would just lay out that there's this opening, the whole tribal council was a whole lot of people using a lot of words to not say anything.
It's true.
I thought it was kind of hilarious to have Donathan and Laurel saying, turns out there is a crack, and, you know, we know what it is, and we know how it could split, and all of this, and everyone acting shocked to hear of such a thing, when we know that every single one of them knew that because they were in on one side or the other of that crack.
Right. There was definitely a crack.
Every single individual knew it. They just all thought that they were the only ones who knew it. And so the idea of, do the others know? Does the other side know? Anyway, it's kind of funny to watch it in that sense. But I did wonder if it was possible Wendell might play his idol. And I think just the scene where he seemed suspicious of Laurel was really the only evidence to suggest that that was a possibility.
Yep.
But in any event, he doesn't play it and didn't need to, because the votes work out pretty much just exactly as we could have predicted, which is that Laurel and Donathan did not side with the other group. So it was just Chelsea and Kellen and Angela who voted for Wendell. Is that right? Wait. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah. I got paranoid for some reason. I think because we hadn't talked about Angela the whole episode except for the family member thing. We'd kind of not, we talked about the girls.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't do much other than this episode.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So Chelsea voted out. I liked Chelsea okay. I don't feel like I ever really got a good handle on her as a person or a player, though.
I mean, she was good at challenges. She had won a couple in a row there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was definitely good at challenges.
By the way, split into.
Whoops! You went a little broken up on me there for a second.
I think she benefited by the fact that they split them into where there were multiple winners a little bit. Mm-hmm. I mean, but so did the other winners. But
yeah,
she did win a couple. So but that was really all we knew about her game, was that she was good at those individual challenges.
Yeah, I think just something about her personality, I felt like I just didn't have a solid read on her, like even though it's, we have to understand that we're watching edited versions of these things, it kind of breaks these actual complex human beings down into rough archetypes for the purpose of a TV show narrative, right? But I feel like she never settled into any particular box for me.
Yeah, I would say that's fair.
Yeah. She was glad to have gone out fighting, and I liked that because I'm saying, yes, she tried to do something and it didn't work out, but at least she tried to do something.
Right. Like,
as opposed to going out by accident because you're trying to play it safe and it turns out that you were just a casualty of some weird vote twist.
Yes.
Yep.
Let's have more fighting. More fighting on your way out.
Yeah. So, or even better, more fighting while you're still there.
Right. To win some stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. But in any event, next time, Donathan apparently spots Dom doing something with his idol or something. It's a little bit unclear, I thought, but it seems that was the implication. But then, according to Dom, Donathan goes completely rogue. Perhaps. And I'm thinking it's like, yeah, see, now it's all blown up. You could have blindsided Wendell this time, but
yep.
Now what are you gonna do? But I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Maybe they'll do something interesting with all that.
Yep, we will see.
Yep, they do have the numbers to make it work if they can get everyone on the same page.
That will be tricky, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I mean, if they can successfully isolate Dom and Wendell, well, see, except we know they both have idols, so it's kind of like even if you wanted to try to take 5-on-2 and split the votes with 3 votes going to one person, 2 votes going to the other to try to control if there's an idol. But what if they both play an idol? Then the whole, at least you get the idols out, but you still fail to get rid of either of them.
Yeah.
But in any event, we'll see how it goes next week, which will be the penultimate episode, the last regular episode before the finale.
Yep.
Yep. All right. So thank you everybody for watching and or listening, and we'll be back for more talking about Survivor.
Yes.
Good night.
Right.